For the love of... Is this just gonna be the year of EVs dying? At this rate, there are more EVs being discontinued and killed off than there are new ones coming in. I don't like the way this trend is going. I'm ready for the alternate timeline, okay? Let's get Dr. Strange in here and rewind time or something, because apparently Polestar, which is a Swedish design company with factories, stores, service centers, basically, it's an auto company making all electric vehicles that are okay. I've never been like the biggest fan ever, but because of the Department of Commerce deeming that too much of the vehicle is coming from China / has software that interacts with servers that are in China, because I guess Polestar is largely owned by the Chinese brand Geely, and our own government has decided that they can't sell vehicles for the 2027 model year. Keep in mind, Polestar 3 was being manufactured by Americans in America in South Carolina, and the design of the vehicle, the headquarters of Polestar and everything was based in Sweden. And of course, the big example everyone keeps coming back to is, why isn't Volvo banned? Well, it's not entirely clear because these investigations were not made public for obvious reasons, but apparently Volvo filed for an exemption to this ban, even though they are also majority owned by Geely. And I guess Volvo, unlike Polestar, was able to prove to the Department of Commerce that their vehicle software was not, pinging back to servers based in China for some reason. But Polestar, I suppose, was not able to prove that. And that is why I guess several EV options are now going to be going away. The Polestar 3 has been out and manufactured in America for a while, so that's no longer going to exist, at least here in the United States. And the Polestar 4, which just launched, which is a huge shame because it was probably my favorite Polestar ever. To be honest, the Polestar 2 was never that intriguing to me. It very much reeked of a gas vehicle retrofitted into an EV. I liked that it had a hatchback and stuff, but I think from the beginning something Polestar always kind of struggled with was standing out in some particular way. I mean, I always found their vehicles beautiful on the exteriors and even the interiors, but when I had the privilege of checking out the Polestar 6 in person and interviewing the Polestar CEO at the time, he retired like a month after I talked to him, he basically was able to emphasize to me that Polestar's focus is trying to just be around design and performance. But of course, design is fairly subjective and it depends on the person. Obviously, when you looked at the specs of the Polestar vehicles, they were always kind of pricey and kind of low range, which was kind of the two biggest areas of focus of most EV people. So when you made a vehicle that didn't have great range or a particularly low price, it was hard for people to get excited just for it looks kind of cool and also performance, because that's also a little bit vague. And at least on paper, the 0 to 60 times and everything were not quite class leading, which is what most people unfortunately look at. I'm sure they handled great and around a track they were probably much better than the average car, but EVs have very much kind of leveled the playing field when it comes to just like track dynamics. And Polestar didn't design their own motors. Again, they were spun off from Volvo. And the other issue I was starting to have with them as time went on, despite me really liking the Polestar 4, was I ironically found Volvo making better EVs overall. I found the EX30 a lot more interesting and just compact and smartly designed with decent software, and I would take an EX30 over a Polestar 2 or a Polestar 3 any day, or honestly probably a Polestar 4. As much as I loved the exterior of the 4, none of the Polestars charged particularly great. But now, if we're talking about like best crossover of 2026, I am leaning towards giving it to like the Volvo EX60, because they did just such a great job with the interior, the exterior, making it aerodynamic. And unlike the Polestars, the EX60 actually gets pretty great range. Like you can get over 400 miles with that thing, and it can charge crazy fast while being substantially cheaper than the Polestar 3. So the reason I'm bringing up all my issues with the Polestar brand is that there's a chance like that they could have gone through the work of doing what Volvo did to make sure they could get an exemption from the Department of Commerce. But as many people online have already brought up, only 6% of Polestar sales was actually within the United States. So basically what I'm trying to say is they're probably gonna be fine. I mean, they're definitely not super profitable by any means, but most of their sales are in Europe and other countries. So they may have just decided, you know what, if the US is gonna be like this resistant towards us and our vehicles are selling way better in other countries because people appreciate our design or our heritage or our performance more there, and we just can't compete in the US because people want, I don't know, Rivians and Teslas more here, then maybe it's just not worth the trouble. And maybe Polestar is just using this as an excuse. Like, obviously it would be pretty bad PR if Polestar was just like, you know what, we've decided without the EV tax credit anymore, we're just losing too much money in the American market, so we're gonna leave it. Everyone would be mad at Polestar. But maybe they perhaps saw an out and said, oh, well, if the Department of Commerce wants to ban us for some weird, obscure, like, too many ties with China. It's just so stupid to me. I'm sorry. I haven't seen any compelling evidence that, like, the Chinese government could use Chinese vehicles to track American drivers. That's the verbiage everyone keeps using online. And I'm like, what is the Chinese government gonna do with our driving data? I mean, are you worried about them listening to us through the microphones in the car? Over half of the electronics in the United States is already manufactured in China, but people are like, oh no, that's different because it doesn't connect to some certain Chinese server. And I don't know, I just have a hard time following the theory that the Swedish, Nordic company that's designing vehicles and manufacturing them within the United States is totally up for like spying on American citizens so that one of their shareholders can help their government. It's stupid. Our government spies on us all the time. They just don't want other governments spying on us. But I wouldn't be surprised at all, like if I was Polestar, and especially with the removal of the EV tax credit, EV sales softening in the US because there's so much negative press around them now. Maybe they just decided with inventory piling up and Polestar 3 and 4 not exactly flying off the shelves, they're like, let's just leave and we can blame it on the US government because that'll probably be a better look. People will be mad at the government instead of us. That might not necessarily be true, but I am saying if I was Polestar, I would probably have made the same call. The bigger problem, I think, with them exiting the market and just deciding that it's not worth the fight is their vehicles were just not compelling enough. I guess the Polestar 4 was very much kind of retrofitted Chinese tech that they were just kind of putting their skin on top of, which is probably why it's good. We talk about on this channel all the time how much better EVs are in China, and I've even done a video where, spoilers on that one, I basically explained that I think Chinese EVs should be allowed in the US without tariffs and without the requirement of building them here, because I personally think the American buying public is much more resistant to EVs than most people realize, and even if the Chinese EVs were available here, people would still be buying lots and lots of gas cars. Just like Legacy Auto, like Ford, GM, and Stellantis, they all were able to survive the flood of Korean and Japanese cars. Yes, they've sold well here. Yes, they're very popular, but it didn't bankrupt the legacy automakers. And already, because this is a controversial topic, I bet there's a bunch of Americans that would never even come close to a Chinese vehicle in the United States. But the biggest irony of this whole thing of like people say, we can't let Chinese cars come here, they're spying on us, they're gonna track our driving data. Like the Prime Minister of China is like, ooh, this guy drove 15 miles over the speed limit today, interesting. It's like there are Chinese EVs being imported to Mexico and Canada all the time, and they love to drive over the border. They do it all the time. So whether or not you're comfortable with Chinese EVs in America, they are here. So are these same people also going to be in favor of like banning Chinese cars from passing the border? Like when you go to Border Patrol, they have to look at the VIN to make sure that it wasn't manufactured in China? How insane are we going to get with this is my question, because it feels like that's where we're headed, despite the fact that Chinese technology is like everywhere all over the country. But now there are American-made vehicles being banned because of some level of software calibration. And I feel like that was probably addressable. Volvo proved it is fixable, and Polestar maybe just didn't feel like proving it and would rather us blame the government. That's my conspiracy theory for the day. Are you guys gonna miss Polestar? I'm particularly worried for current Polestar owners because of service. And well, yes, I know Polestar has said that they're gonna keep their showrooms and stuff. They can still sell out of existing inventory, and they've said they'll keep servicing existing vehicles. But if you're not selling new ones, I feel like they could also easily justify like shutting down more and more locations, and that's just going to make service even more challenging than it's already been for Polestar 2, 3, and 4 owners. Congrats to everybody out there who got a lease. That was probably the right move, and I'm pretty sad that we're never going to see the Polestar 5 in the US. That would have been a nice like Model S competitor. Feels like there's not going to be much entries into the full-size sedan market in the US because everybody just wants to buy their crossovers. If it's not a Model Y or an R2, people aren't interested these days. So I don't know, Polestar 5 would have been fun, but rest in peace, at least in America. Good luck in the rest of the world, Polestar, and let me know what you guys think of the news down in the comments below. Thank you to everybody supporting this channel directly. Seriously, helps us out a ton, as does just watching these videos. So thanks again. Have an excellent rest of your day.